All right, Algebra 2 guys. Solving quadratics by completing the square. Yes, you are learning another method to solve quadratic equations. There's a lot of different ways, and it's good to know more than one way to solve something. In math, we try and do that all the time. We try and figure out how many different ways can we solve things. It's kind of the nature of the beast. It's kind of a double-edged sword. The good news about math is that there's more than one way to solve everything. The bad news about math, there's more than one way to solve everything. So, such as the case, we're talking about solving quadratics by completing the square. So remember, quadratic equations are equations that look like this. Ax squared plus bx equals 0. So when solving them, we're trying to figure out what is the value of x that will make that whole thing 0. So remember, a, b, and c are all numbers. X is what we're putting in. We're trying to make it equal to 0. So now, that goes there. Graphing. Solving by graphing. That happens when we try to graph it and see where it crosses the x-axis, so the x-intercepts. We could do this easily by using our graphing calculators. Slight problem. You guys don't like graphing. Well, that's okay. So plan B. We don't love graphing. So then we try factoring. So we try and breaking it apart into simple things that we set each part equal to 0, and we solve it for whatever's left. So if we get x squared plus 3x plus 2, that becomes x plus 2x plus 1 equals 0. So my answer is going to be -2 or -1. We've talked about that. That's that whole working backwards and then set each part equal to 0. So now, bad news, not every quadratic in the world can be factored, or it's not very easy to be factored. But we can also do the square root property, which is kind of what we talked about a little bit last time, to where if I add 25 to both sides, x squared equals 25, square root, x equals plus or minus 5. Remember, anytime you take a square root, it's got to be 2 solutions. So, we have this now. X squared plus 10x plus 25 equals 49. So now, rather than try and take 45 or 49 back and factor it, what I need to recognize is that this factored is x plus 5. Factored, it actually becomes x plus 5 times x plus 5. Well, this is nothing more than x plus 5 squared. So you've got to recognize that you can factor that and get it x plus 5. And the second I see this, I've got to think mentally in my head, hey, that could look like that. So square root this. So x plus 5 equals 7. And x plus 5 equals -7. So when I do that, x equals 2. When I do that, x equals -12. So my answer is going to be 2 and -12. So same kind of idea here. X squared minus 16x plus 64. This is going to be x minus 8 times x minus 8. So that's going to be x minus 8 squared equals 49. And the same thing ensues. Take the square root of both sides. So x minus 8 equals 7. X minus 8 equals -7. So x equals 15 or x equals 1. Just by doing that. If I try this one, x squared minus 6x plus 9, we'll do it quick. This becomes x minus 3 squared equals 32. What I can do here is go x minus 3, simplify that into 16, or I'm sorry, not 16, 4, square root of 16, 4 square root of 2. But that doesn't help me very much. All right, trying to solve this. If I added over plus, there was a 1, it would also be -4 square root of 2. And that just is kind of messy. I don't like doing it that way. That's kind of messy. I don't want to deal with that. That's not very nice. So what we're trying to do is complete the square. So take a look at this. x plus 7 squared. So you would take x plus 7 times x plus 7, multiply it out, you get x squared plus 14x plus 49, and you work there. So let's do this. Let's do this. We can't factor it very well. It doesn't really work out well. So x squared plus 8x minus 20, factors of 20 and subtract 8. We could factor this one. We could get negative 10 or positive 10, negative 2. We could do it. But I want to do it by completing the square. And here's how I do that. Start with c. Start with what's by itself. Put that on the other side. So I'll get x squared plus 8x equals 20. Then I'm going to take whatever's in front of just the x, whatever's here, divide it by 2 and square it. So that's going to be 16. I'm going to add that to both sides of the equation. X squared plus 8x plus 16 equals 20 plus 16. Need to put it on that other side. Now, why do I do this? I do this because I divide this by 2 and square it. I do that because this is now easy to factor. This is nothing more than x plus 4 squared. That's not a coincidence. Whatever this number is when you divide it by 2, that's that number that goes right here. So this was 8 divided by 2, that's 4. That's what goes here. This was 24 divided by 2. This number here would be 12. All right, that's not a coincidence. That's kind of a cool thing to notice. And that's going to equal 36. So now it becomes a matter of solving by the square root. So this becomes x plus 4 equals 6, and x plus 4 equals negative 6. So x is going to be 2, and x is going to be negative 10. So that's solving by completing the square. All right? So find the value of c that makes x squared plus 12x plus c a perfect square, and write the trinomial of a perfect square. So all this is saying is take 12, divide it by 2, and square it. That will make it a perfect square trinomial. So that's 6 squared, that's going to be 36. So that's going to be x plus 6 squared. So this is the perfect square trinomial. That's what it would be factored. So solving by completing the square. Let's do it. So add 35 to both sides. X squared plus 2x equals 35. 2 divided by 1, or 2 divided by 2 squared is 1. So I go x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 35 plus 1. So that's going to be x plus 1 squared equals 36. So x plus 1 equals 6. X plus 1 equals negative 6. So x equals 5. X equals negative 7. There's my answers. That's all there is to it. Take it across the other side and do the completing the square. Now, it's not always going to work. It's not always going to work out so nice either. So be aware of that. So x squared plus 10x equals negative 9. 10 divided by 2 squared. Hey, that's going to be 25. Plus 25. That gives me 16. So this is going to be x plus 5 squared. So x plus 5 equals 4, and x plus 5 equals negative 4. So x is going to equal negative 1, x is going to equal negative 9. There's my answer. 1 and negative 1, negative 9. So taking a look. Change number 8 on your notes to this thing. So let's look. X squared plus 14x plus 13 equals 0. So 14 divided by 2 squared. Again, it's always this middle number divided by 2 squared. So that's going to be 49. I'm going to add 49 over here. This is going to be x plus 7 squared. 49 minus 13 is 36. Square root, square root. When I do that, I get -1 and I get -13. That's what we got. Thank you for playing. So parallelogram is half its height. The area of the parallelogram is 18 inches. Why do we do geometry so much? I'm so glad you asked. Just because you completed the required geometry course doesn't mean you can forget about it. You will have a continued use of geometry throughout your life, just as you will with math. Main reason we still bring geometry to you is because you will see it on the MCA, the ACT, and the SAT. Ever heard of the saying, if you don't use it, you lose it? We don't want those geometry skills to go out the window just because it was last year. All right, that's all I got. Come talk to me with questions. Let's get this figured out. Completing the square is a little bit tricky, especially after you're so used to factoring.